and another complex like this from all big players.
Test. Okay. Sorry about the late start here. We had some technical difficulties with the slides we were planning. We were really only have about 4 or 5 videos to show, but we were planning this to be a panel discussion anyway. So what we're going to do is we're going to dive into the questions and just have some conversations around our digital twin project at DFW. High level, we have integrated 4 different work management systems in our digital twin. Building information models, the Esri GIS interface. We have about 250,000 endpoints from 4 different control platforms. Beyond that, there's various point integrations with our smart glass system and a few others. So it's been a long roadmap, and we've got a fairly large footprint on the twin project so far. So if you look at the terminal itself, we have terminals A, B, part of C, because C is in construction. We have our terminal D, and we're onboarding terminal E right now. So we'll have near 100% coverage for use cases like HVAC monitoring, electrical monitoring. And with the next project coming up, we're looking at surfacing some of the IT infrastructure, switchgear, UPSs, things of that nature. So it's really been a journey related to getting more proactive and predictive on our system health monitoring. But there's some feedback we can share from the program. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions, and we can kind of talk through those. And feel free if the audience wants to ask some questions here too. We can make this a bit collaborative. So I'm going to start with the question here. What are critical considerations when planning for generative AI and AI agents in your digital twin strategy? So, the way we kind of looked at the twin in the past, we would connect platforms, but not necessarily think about the data as much. So the rich text data, which will be in anywhere from your commissioning documents to operator manuals, inspections, your capital planning, all of that presents opportunity to surface data at the right time to give you more context. So the biggest thing is when you start to get into these programs now, you want to look at it from different lenses. So LLM is becoming more and more important. So how do you structure that data effectively so that we can surface it? So what about you? What are your thoughts on preparing data for digital twin?
Is this on? Okay. I think from my perspective, just kind of as a geospatial professional, I think just like I mentioned in our original presentation this morning, it's all about the data that goes into the model, right? It's all about what exactly are we trying to achieve? What do we have so far? So like Kelly mentioned, let's start with the paper, start with all of that, get that all loaded into your system, get it all digitized, get it ready for whatever consumption is going to happen, whether that be through AI, whether that be real time, something like that. And so, I don't know, you have to make sure that, all of your departments, for us in particular, we have to make sure all of our departments are aligned. Just like I mentioned with the AWARE project, we're using all those, those data models into this AI system, for predictive modeling. We have to ensure that that data is sound. Otherwise, that the model is just going to display terrible information. It's not going to work for us.
Yeah, and one thing I might add to that is where are you storing your data and how you're going to pull it from that location. You don't want to duplicate data over and over again. So really looking at the enterprise data strategy and how data needs to move or be retrieved. So looking at data orchestration tools that can connect in can be really valuable to pull and push data as you're laying the strategy out. What about you, Trini? Any thoughts on this?
Yeah. I can say in our DFW we have this digital twin platform, and all this we have uploaded all the user manuals, operational manuals, and you ask a question there if there is anything not working in AHU, what could be the possible reason, and it will answer simple questions. And we are working on it to make it more real time, like if we are submitting any inspections or all those real-time inspections what are going on, it can we have done a test case that it can integrate and LLM can answer if there is any issues with some PBB or some particular asset, it can give you very specific answers, so that's cool.
But while you're doing the inspections, right, thinking about that process of how you're collecting the data, is it in the suppository that you want it to be in, right? So thinking through that, also the granularity of the data. So, you know, we had an asset survey team that we internally staffed because it was quite a bit cheaper than, you know, having a consultant come out. So we had 6 full-time people. Their whole job was to, you know, physically touch assets, collect attribute information. Also, we Matterported all of our critical rooms. And we felt it was easy to capture that data while we're there. It's pretty low cost, low effort. And as a result, we took about 1,500 Matterport files and put those onto a GIS map. So you can look at the map view and you can click on any of those rooms to open up and see what's inside. And we actually tagged the assets there as well. But kind of speaking to that a little bit from an LLM perspective, we didn't gather all the data we maybe should have gathered. In particular with our air handlers are custom built. So some of them have different size motors, so we didn't capture the amount of data that we needed on our first pass. And that was an oversight, and we have to go back and collect that information again. So really understanding what are the future ways that you're going to interact with data to make sure that you collect the appropriate amount of data. You don't want to collect too much, but it's that age-old question, especially with BIM modeling, you want to get just enough for the use case, right?
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of that too, you know, we're mainly an Esri shop, right? And so, you know, we just deployed our ArcGIS Enterprise, I think, last August, and you know, we're in the process of really revamping a lot of these traditionally very linear, very static systems. And you know, one way that we're thinking about using Matterport is integrating it into ArcGIS Indoors. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that platform, but you know, it's traditionally used for indoor wayfinding, but there's a lot of other use cases that fall, you know, into that. You know, as far as, especially from a customer standpoint, there's a lot of good, you know, wayfinding there. But we can use it for other work order systems, things like that. You know, if you have a crew that needs to go fix an air handler, they're just not sure where it is. Maybe they're a contractor new to the airport. Now they can be directed to that section. They can look at it beforehand, assess where they're going to be looking. When they finally get there, they can actually perform the repairs or what have you.
So, Tarini, another question for you, and it's really about the culture and the sport, especially at the executive leadership level. How do you remain engaged with stakeholders to ensure that we don't get to apathy, especially when we have competing interests from different departments? Just throwing in an easy one.
Really?
You got some opinions on that one?
Yeah, it's a hard question. Actually, it requires a lot of communication with the departments and their own dynamics and pursuing them again and again. And showing them, I think first is like, show them what they need. Like the very first thing, what their objective is, meeting that objective, and then build upon it.
Yeah, just like I mentioned in the presentation earlier today, you know, you have to know who your end users are. And sometimes the end users don't know who we are. And so that's a problem. And so, you know, myself and Tarini and, you know, the other analysts that we have on our team, you know, we're having to be these ambassadors, so to speak, for IT. You know, because right now they look at IT and we're the managers of all these contracts. So they look at us and they say, okay, you know, how are you helping us? Are you able to understand what we really need? And so that's when we have our in-person meetings. That's when we have our, you know, our touch points where we're making sure that, hey, we're not trying to take your job. We're actually trying to help you implement something that you'll use. And so we have to get with these managers and say, you know, and convince them essentially to adopt this software or this solution that we can come up with. And you know, ITS stands for Information Technology Services. So instead of just being, you know, information technology support services, we're offering them services to help further their mission.
Yeah, and to build on that, you know, they have to be involved with the process. It has to be their idea. So as Adan is mentioning, you know, from an IT perspective, IT is there to support, but really the business problems are their business problems. And they need to own the end solution. It's really, really critical they have the involvement, they have the ownership, and they're guiding the process, not just showing up at meetings. One of the things that we did that I think was really impactful is we did a financial calculator on the return on investment. So we sat down with finance and we collected feedback from users on where they felt savings would be or where they felt there was a lot of cost. And then, you gotta test that, right? Because that could be the problem of the day. And we look back at 6 years and we're like, well, no, that really isn't a big financial problem. So really testing and validating that. We also looked at a lot of studies that are out there, some really good papers on like fault detection and diagnostics. There's other case studies you can reference. So we built a case study, we built a financial calculator so that we can see the return on investment. You also have to be conservative with those types of things, though. So we put 2 constraints on, and when you build a tool, it's only valuable if you use it. So one of the constraints was how many people have adopted the tool, which means that they're using it to a certain frequency, logging in, and using it on a regular basis. So one of the constraints is from how many people using the tool. The other was how much footprint. It's really hard to get adoption when you have 10% of the project scope done, or 10% of the real estate. You're never going to get that kind of full adoption. So picking your use case, proving it, and then rolling it out as fast as possible. So on our HVAC use cases, it says we're probably, when we're done internally, we're about 90% done, and any new construction will come in. So the opportunities for full-scale adoption are very high. So those are a couple of my. Okay. What's next?
Are there any questions, or does anybody have any?
Go ahead.
Yeah, sure.
Well, on the 1,500 Matterports,
Those right here.
thank you. On the 1,500 Matterport scans, 2 things. Could you describe the 5 primary use cases of the Matterport scans? And then second, you mentioned about geolocating the Matterport scans on your GIS map. Was that the Matterport or the E57 file that you were locating?
No, we're just relating the URLs to the map. So we were using the E57 files and building it out with 3D. The use case is really, the value was there just to support the asset tagging project alone. It was worth it just to do it for that purpose. Because when you're out there and you're collecting information in spreadsheets, it's very easy to have mistakes. So having the visual evidence to be able to confirm where the asset is, and that was really critical. And we took photographs for all the asset tags as well. So that was one of the use cases. The other is there's a certain fidelity in a BIM model where you will deliberately not model certain conduit size, valve tags. So there's a lot of rich context in reality capture you don't get from a model. So it complements the model. Piping, arrows on pipes for flow, hot and cold water. It adds a lot of rich detail to support the twin as a data set.
Were there other use cases?
Well, sure. It's to support the maintenance teams, right? So when you have, in our twin, we have a predictive analytics, fault detection tools that trigger something, an insight. You'll want to be able to physically see the system from a BIM perspective, but the imagery also supports your ability to understand the system, where it's located. So there's all sorts of things you got to think about, like do I need a ladder? Do I need protection? So there's a lot of those types of things in terms of being prepared for that type of response. Also, an unintended use case that came from it is working with our PMO is just the amount of projects we do where we have to have people come on site to validate something and to get access. So being able to use that virtually has been huge on projects.
And just a follow-up on your ROI calculator.
Yeah.
This morning you talked about 2 problems. One was the $5 million failure, and one was the $1 million that turned into more. Do you really need an ROI calculator when you?
Well, those came up as we need to see how frequent they happen. The total value of those would be cost avoidances because you can't really plan for them. And then there's cost savings would be more along the lines of our water loss. So the water loss in the airport, well, we would probably call it unaccounted for water, it was over 25%, which is extremely high. It's about $1,700 a day in unaccounted for water. So getting better control on that. Part of that can be from leaks, part of it is just not proper accounting. For example, we hand out meters to construction sites, and that meter needs to be put on a hydrant so we can see the draw that they're taking out. So that wasn't being done. So part of it can be processed too. So cost avoidance and then also cost savings are the way to kind of umbrella that. And it can also go into things like parts. It can go into extending the asset life cycle so that you get an extra few years out of the asset. So there are ways to calculate that based on good maintenance behaviors. I have good tools to be able to do that. And then I guess the last one I would say that was kind of shaped our thinking. We have an executive goal that says that we are planning to have a 25% operational savings in our service contracts. And the service contracts are about $150 million, so it's not small. So when you can start to put a big ticket item like that and start to look at that kind of marginal or that kind of magnitude of change, you can really get support. So once we were able to kind of lay out the numbers and all agree to it, I let the finance team do that. I didn't tell them the numbers. I would give them industry guidance and what to look for, but have them come up with the numbers. Because then they can confidently share it with the stakeholders. And that was really big because the question is, how can we do this faster? And then you can really quantify each of the use cases as well based on the return that you're expecting. Good questions. Let's talk about change management, Karini. I know it was part of your last conversation, but what are the challenges that we face as an organization with change management? And maybe talk us through a little bit how we're using Survey 1, 2, 3 to collect information and automating emails to different stakeholders and hold them accountable to have that change.
For change management, we have sometimes there are one team is involved, sometimes there's just one department, but several times there are multiple teams are involved. So for change management, if there are specifically for digital twin, because there are multiple aspects of it and multiple teams are working on it, someone need Matterport more, someone want to see the utilities or AHUs or whatnot, and someone is responsible for BIM, someone is only working on building automation system. So all these things require multiple teams, multiple departments to work in insane frequency. So that it's only possible either you carry out numerous endless meetings or you automate the process.
Yeah, and it's so critical. Like, if we can't trust the data, we won't use the data. And that's the age-old question. So whenever you're putting together a strategy, change management has to be a big part of that. And that also, you've got to think about operational change on a totally different kind of way of looking at this. We had to change our contracts with our service providers. We had to implement requirements and KPIs. We had to re-engineer how we do business digitally. So that has to be reflected in everything we do, especially when you have partners. So that also included, different types of capabilities from the resources that we're contracting out. They need to be able to use digital tools. So those are things you've got to kind of factor into the strategy as a whole. Let's talk about proofs of concept. Where to pick a proof of concept that's going to be successful? What would you look for, and where will you see failure? Obviously, the Terminal D was probably our biggest challenge at the airport. We picked, before I came on, they picked the hardest, most complicated, oldest system because they figured if we can fix this, then we get our money back. And what happened is it became a 3-year problem child that POC really struggled. We had to upgrade controllers on the BAS system. The data just wasn't available. So I would say, pick something that's going to be easy to implement, not hard, so that you can show success and you can scale from there. Any thoughts from your side?
Yeah, and that's kind of going back to the GIS portion, and just kind of thinking about, just from a mapping standpoint. I mean, we a lot of this stuff. I mean, we have our interior data, we have exterior, we have land management, land change, construction management. We have just about everything cataloged, ready to go. It's just a matter of, okay, if we want you to proof of concept for, say, a Terminal C expansion, which is kind of what we're doing. Terminal F is another one. But Terminal C, reconstruction, all that stuff, I mean, it's kind of a big deal because that's kind of some crumbling infrastructure because that was our first terminal, that is our oldest terminal. It's like we have our slides, but
I'll let you finish up.
yeah, no worries. That one specifically is a huge deal because I mean this is a heavily used terminal, and so we need to be able to implement these improvements in stages, in sections. That's exactly what we're doing. We started with the high gates, C 30 to C 20 something, and we want to expand, so on and so forth.
I would like to add on this. We were working with Department of Public Safety and we were working on a proof of concept. So for them, all buildings are not same. So what we chose 3 different buildings. One, we chose a 50,000 square foot warehouse. And another one is a building like our own headquarter building where people, utility room and everything is there. And then another building is just the utilities. So we chose these 3 different buildings and we wanted to collect those critical points what they are looking for. And all these buildings, they are totally different in terms of their critical infrastructure. So it depends what your user is looking for and accordingly choosing a project for proof of concept.
So kind of doing this backwards because our slides are arriving just on time now. So I'm going to talk to you and show you some of our twin and our use cases. And we'll kind of go through this. And we really have 6 main areas that we're focusing in on. Improving our workforce efficiency by having digital data that's available, by using predictive analytics. That we had to do workshops. We had to do workshops with our conveyance team, with our water team, our HVAC team to understand, do we have the data that we need, or do we need to add sensors to be able to reach the use case goals? And the answers were we did need more sensors on a lot of the equipment that we wanted to monitor. For example, the passenger boarding bridges we brought up many times here. That's our second most valuable asset. First is a runway. You can't land planes, you can't make money, you can't do business. Second is you need gates available. We have 170 gates, and we have 20% more passengers, and we still have to use those 170 gates until we get new construction in. So we have to get more out of those assets. How do you do that? Well, we simply can't have unplanned failures. So thinking of like the hydraulic failures, the wheel bogey fails, the mechanical failures that happen on these bridges, didn't have sensing capabilities to monitor. Some of this was only local. So not only do we want to make sure we have the right data, the right frequency, and then we can actually get it into our intended platform. So the other use cases, again, is around HVAC. I think it's a pretty standard fault detection and diagnosis. HVAC's an easy one to implement because typically your air handlers and your devices do have the sensors in place, whereas other assets may not. So we're really not needing to add sensors as much as really making sure that the data is coming in. The bigger problem is we have all these different communication protocols, and we have 5 different control platforms. So it was really the normalizing of the data and the bringing it to the cloud was a 9-month problem for us. I basically stopped and said, we've got to figure this out before we do anything else. So, we ended up moving to create our own independent cloud layer using an MQTT broker. Not to get too technical, basically it's an open protocol, and it's been invaluable because now we have an enterprise solution in place. Anything at the airport now that's a sensor, we can consider that method of data communication now. And really, we make the decision on how our data is moving in the organization rather than having the vendor figure it out for us and having all these disparate systems. So really start to think about being interoperable, scalable. It really simplifies things as you start to move forward with the projects. So these are the different systems. This project will increase quite a bit in terms of number of twins and data after our project Terminal F is done. The 4 different building automation controls, anyone here there's a building automation control person. We have Andover, AX, Niagara, Tritium, Train, and we have a Delta V SCADA system, all separate control systems. And if you want to bring all that data to surface in a single platform, really was helpful. So you can see everything from BIM models to GIS. There's some specific integrations listed on the right-hand side. There's a lot of work to get here, but you can create kind of shortcuts to get there more effectively when you have a single suppository for data, like a data lake or a data storage warehouse. So then you can pull the data and you don't have to do much integration. So again, the whole data exercise and getting your enterprise data flow knocked out is so critical for the strategy. I did mention contracts. So we had to change our construction contracts. This is a video showing our Terminal C rehab. So we are making sure that the BIM models are handed over from construction and brought directly into our twin. So the right fidelity and level of detail, and all of that was an exercise of creating a digital infrastructure standards manual to make sure that we're receiving data as we intended. One actually interesting find when I was talking to our electrical team is that there are electrical models that are typically built during the design stage, and these are usually run through a product, so they do the coordination and the simulation. But those digital files are rarely handed over to the owner. So we changed that requirement, and that digital file must be handed over. So now we can just ingest a file and have thousands of electrical attributes on a brand new building like our ECOP, which is a new electrical plant, or Terminal F, which will come over next year, and we can manage the load of our electrical system. It was just a simple contract change, making sure we have a platform to bring it in, but we also have to have the resources to manage it and keep it accurate. So those are the types of things you want to start to think about. Now, we do have facilities that aren't new builds, so we have to go and scan. This is our Terminal D, it's our largest terminal. It's 2.7 million square feet. There's 7 levels, and a lot of really complex equipment, like our conveyors and baggage systems. So we contracted a gentleman, Matt Bird, you guys might know with RCN. He had a company called Nexus that was just sold off. And they did a phenomenal job. We did Navis and Leica full color. And what we realized too is once we started to capture this, it's not cheap to scan something like this, you can imagine, all survey control. We want to be able to repurpose that. And we didn't really have cloud infrastructure to handle these types of files. You know, we have our license of Leica, Navis, etc. But we also wanted to make sure it's secure. Because what was happening is, and even today, actually, this morning, someone came up to me and said, hey, I got a scan of your Terminal C. Would you guys like it? And this happens to us every bloody day, because so many contractors are scanning data. You know, there's two sides of this. We want to be able to keep our data and repurpose it, especially things that are high cost. And there's a lot of value, even if the interior changes, the structure doesn't change, the stairs don't change. There's a lot of reason to use this. So we went through and checked, we did an evaluation of different platforms. We picked a platform called Bloom. It's a Canadian company, it's an OEM for Trimble. And we really liked the platform because we could use our own cloud, Azure, and use their platform over top. And for me, that was a game changer, not only from a security perspective, but from a scalability perspective. We had very good cloud licensing, so it was very inexpensive to scale. And I was looking at some of the other vendors, it was like $100,000, another $100,000. It was just not going to make sense financially. So, the whole device that was in the basket, you know, you hand over your deliverable as a hard drive, that's gone away now. We're starting to collect data. We're not there yet. We're just onboarding, but we see a real big vision to be able to manage this long term. So this is Bloom. I just showing you. It's nothing too fancy. There's a lot of functionality under the hood, but you know, it can have thousands of point cloud files that are served up to our organization. We have the right permissions and controls that we're looking for. So this is one of our pump rooms listed there. Also, we can bring in multiple different files. That was another thing I looked at. I wanted to make sure we use the variety of equipment. I want to make sure that all of this type of data we can bring in. And including even our Matterport files, E57s, etc. There are some more sensitive infrastructure I don't necessarily want in a cloud platform that's not our cloud. So those are things that we've thought through, and it took some time to get to where we are, but we really have a good system now. Ideally, and in our contracts, also with the construction contracts, it's a handover cloud now in a certain format. And vendors will play tricky games on you. I've talked to the head of BZT at a number of firms. I'll never give them the point cloud, or I'll make it so big and complicated they'll never be able to do it. It's like a 10 terabyte file, and that's silliness to stop built, right? So we set the exact. I want the individual scans. I want the last revision. I want it at this decimation or whatever it is. We have to speak very clearly on what we want, how we want it delivered, and then we hand it over and we bring it in our cloud platform, and then they should purge it. We don't want our data on other people's servers because they don't take care of security that we would. And to be honest, if you're going to be a cyber threat, I'd just go find out who did it, and I'd go attack the engineering company. Probably would be a smarter strategy. So being an airport, we're a major threat vector, so we have to be really careful about that kind of thing. And then, as I mentioned, Matterport, it's not that I like Matterport versus another solution. It's a 360 imagery. We have the cameras, and when you come into a customer, you got to use the tools they have. It's been great. And the nice thing I like about it is the resolution of the imagery is good. I can read the asset tags, so that's really cool. So every one of our IT rooms, our HVAC rooms, pump rooms, all these spaces have been scanned. And then we have a team, again, that is a full-time team, and they, when we have change that goes through our change management process, they go out and rescan it. It takes 30 minutes, it costs next to nothing to do it. So that's the way we're trying to keep that updated, and then that becomes evidence to update your BIM model too, because you can physically see what has been changed, and you want to reflect that in the BIM model as well. So that's all kind of mapped out onto maps and all roles, permissions, access. So this is our digital twin, just showing one layer from the Esri view. You see all the red dots, those are Matterport files. So we'll click to enter one, and it's pretty simple. It's not really anything fancy. It's a very simple process anyone can do. But it allows us to manage this data really effectively. And you can see the level, we have all these points of interest that has the proper asset name and attribution on it, plus photographs, in particular inside of like electrical closets and that sort of thing. So that's been an ongoing part of our project. So this is from the 3D view, from the model. So I can dive in here and select a building, and then we'll go in that building. I think it's a central utility plant. So this is a filtered view of the plants. So we have the model there. Any question?
Excuse me, on the tags within the Matterport, is that static information or dynamic information?
It's static. Well, we can, I guess it depends on how it is updated over time, but it's not from a database.
It's not real-time sensors of pressure,
No,
temperature?
So our twin does that. So I don't need it to be done in Matterport. Matterport is a supporting data set, a data source. I don't need to put sensors visible in there. We have dynamic capabilities of a BIM model. So right here, you see the orange. The orange is showing me insights when something is failing. So the color will show the severity, and I can click to dive into that more. But we'll do that from the building information model. I know there's some future state capability. I see some opportunities, and also preparing for the future. We're collecting the imagery because we think there's going to be more and more value for having in the future as well. So these are the predictive insights that are generated. You can see integrated co-pilot, so you can do that. And this is our bridges. These are our bridges. So we've connected actually to the LiDAR parking guidance system, so we can know real time when a plane is approaching or at the gate. There's 5 different stages, and that was really huge for our IOC, or Integrated Operation Command. They just really needed to know what plane was at the gate, and the information was latent. This is real time, and it's as accurate as it can be. So that's been a big deal, and we're improving on our bridge. We're really not rolled out to all the bridges yet. I think we only got 5 bridges that have been sensorized with a gate management software we're doing for continuous monitoring. And the other thing about a twin is like you just don't need one platform. You will have multiple platforms. The twin is the data, and especially in this world of GIS and data capture, we always get really passionate about our scan deliverable, and that is a key part of it. But it's all the data together. It's accessing the data. That's really what the twin is. the way you consume the data, that's the visualization, that's your consumption, right? So if you think about it from that lens, you can manage the data to different stakeholders in different ways. If I'm in the IOC and have big screens, I want to look at data very differently than someone in the field that's going to look at it from my iPhone. So you really got to plan for those types of use cases and different ways to consume that data. Go ahead.
Randomly, but are you able to track a plane using the LiDAR to show where it's at after it's landed and when it gets to the
we
gate?
have like data, actually, the data that you see online called FlightAware, and we have a data pipeline that you can stream. So in one of our next use cases, we plan to have real-time aircrafts so you can see them visually on the airfield. And then also we have GPS tracking on our secure side vehicles, and we will be putting LiDAR, as I mentioned in my other presentation, on all the curbside. So we'll be doing a lot more of that real-time it's not animation, it's real-time streaming of vehicle movement and flight movement.
I should probably ask, how many of you are familiar with, or rather are implementing a twin of some kind, or raise your hands, or manage one or something? Okay.
Oh, that's good. Great.
That's good. Yeah, and so like Kelly said, having a digital twin, yes, that's the data, that's how you consume it, how you consume it is the visualization. But just something I was thinking about, we have groups on, at the airport that, want their own digital twin, and yeah, we have this bigger one, but, we have a lot of smaller, priorities or smaller items around the airport that I think, could use some sort of.
Well, what I think it is, it's like a system twin, right? So we have one twin that's airport-wide that consumes a high level of data for the organization, and then we have built-for-purpose systems that have tools that have a lot more analysis possibly in that tool, and may have some type of 3D visualization. Nothing wrong with that, right? And a specific user is going to use that specific interface. But what we're calling our enterprise twin, we want to have all the models, and so there's a certain there's certain specific data sets that we want to surface there. But again, you can go deeper in other platforms. You don't have to be. I almost hit the single source of truth, the one platform. I mean, it's not always like that, right? We know this in even GIS, right? So it's okay to have other interfaces. Centralize the data. That's the trick. Centralize the data so data can move quickly and easily to the place that you want it to move to. And then you got, the business problem solved. With Copilot, the key takeaways that we had from our initial implementations, we want to get more predictive insights, so we need to have the right amount of data. We learned all sorts of challenges. It's not an easy, just throw data in the system and get your answers back. As I mentioned earlier with air handlers, if I want to know specific information, I need to give the LLM more information so it can give me good information back. So really important to think about that. Workforce improvements, this is huge. We've not talked about the 25% ROI and savings. If we think about re-engineering how we do work, right now the airport creates preventative maintenance based on a commissioning schedule, right? So it's logical after commissioning, you set the schedule, but it's not very convenient when you are running all over the building that's 2.7 million square foot doing PMs. So re-engineering a zone-based maintenance, we're expecting to see maybe a 3 times savings just in the time that it takes to do maintenance. If I'm in this room, I want to do as much as I can do in a single day in that specific place. It also will feed into supply chain with ordering parts and supplies and making sure that that's available when you need it. And you can really start to plan out your 52 weeks of the year with ordering parts. So those are some of the advantages we're hoping to get from this. I have some of my questions here. So let's get some questions from the audience here. It sounds like a number of you are already working on these challenges. I'm really interested in the types of challenges that you might be facing or anything that we might be able to help you with. And I can...
We have a Q&A mic in that.
Right in the center. There's a.
Oh, there you go. You don't have to do that. Appreciate it.
Were there pleasant surprises, things that you had not anticipated, the data, the digital twin enabled?
In terms of use cases and value of using it, is that what you're referring to?
I could imagine that you implemented a number of things related to the digital twin to solve specific problems or challenges.
Yeah.
That said, were there a surprising delight where you realized you could use it in other ways that were significant? And if so, what were those ways?
Yeah, like I said, I made one reference to our PMO. So our project management group be able to use visual data. I'll give you another one actually. It's just last week I was talking to our electronics shop, and they didn't realize we had an inventory of all their equipment, and they're literally running around trying to take inventory of UPS gear. So there's a lot of manual efforts, and when we take someone that is like a very valuable person, like someone that works on that type of equipment, and we give them a task that you could do for $10 an hour, like that's not very good, use of your resources. So really being able to support them to deliver the data that they need to do their job that is most effective. But that's a big one because he was literally running around the airport doing inventory. We already had it. It was like, there you go. And that was great. Also, actually, our security team, there was a recent compliance audit, and they were not able to provide a list of assets as part of that audit. They didn't realize that we had it all. So we were able to hand it over, and from a compliance perspective, they had a complete data set. So that was another nice finding that we recently experienced.
Also, indoor air quality, indoor environmental thing, how much CO2, how lighting, and all those things which used to be ignored. Now we can monitor how we can control the airflow in the terminals. We can control the light. We have smart glasses and all those that is integrated in.
Yeah, I mean, we're bringing a lot of different data in smart building. What it helps us to be able to understand the cause and effect of something. And what we're seeing from the twin is that you can look 2 or 3 layers deep to see if there's something else contributing to an issue. So like the water layers I was showing in the presentation this morning, you have condition assessments and inspections and all this data. It could be contributing to the larger problem, right? So being able to see those in context visually and spatially is really valuable. Other questions?
Are you using IoT data in conjunction with some sort of predictive maintenance to show when systems might fail, or?
Yes. So the question is about using IoT data to predict failures or potential failures before they happen. And that's a core part of the overall strategy. So as I mentioned, we have 250,000 endpoints, those are sensor points that are generating real-time data. And we have a rules engine, like a lot of platforms do, that we can look at set points and schedules and sequences. And then beyond that, there are certain sensors that we'll be deploying machine learning on. So vibration, electrical, we have sensors going on our Skylink train, on our passenger boarding bridges and some of the larger air handlers. So we'll be able to establish the model. Now the big rule here is there's a lot of vendors that want to walk you into a closed garden, and we're really trying to avoid that. So with the MQTT broker, I can wedge ourselves between the end device and some type of platform. And that's key to me, is that because if we remain that way, we can always change the software. We're completely resilient to change in the future. So that's been an architecture. And then also for the end device, I'm not buying proprietary stuff. We've told big companies to say, no, I don't care if your product works well. If it's proprietary, we're just going to go a different direction. So, and that's changing the market. I mean, people are coming back 3-6 months later with solutions that meet our needs. Why? Because we're a pretty big customer and they want our business. So I'd say, don't be afraid to push back a little bit on that and explain to the customers why you need it a certain way.
Thank you.
Yeah, just how are you tackling the issue of having lots of different vendors, having all the systems integrate, and if you do all of that work ahead of time to actually get these 5-6 systems to integrate, how do you then keep them updated so that when things change, especially if you don't own all the systems, like American Airlines owns one of them or someone else owns one of them, like how are you managing that?
Yeah, I can take that one because that's a good question for sort of our team. we do have all these vendors, they do have all these solutions that we're looking for, you know, and we always tell them, you know, once you're done, all is said and done, we will own this. And so we kind of have to have that knowledge going into the contract, is saying, okay, what is this handoff going to look like? You know, like with this Aware project, we're working with a company to help us build it. And they're every step of the way, because let me preface it for a second. This is very executive run. Like executives are on top of this project, and they are monitoring every little bit. So we have, you know, bi-weekly meetings, tri-weekly meetings sometimes, just to make sure we're on track. But with that project, I mean, we keep asking them, what's this going to look like?
But part of this is being smart with your integrations and using integration tools like FME or using MuleSoft, and having that as a requirement for the organization to the vendors. Also, really utilizing a data lake, that's what it's there for. So saving data in a suppository that can be then you know, shared to the organization based on what the business need is. And having kind of contextualized data. We are moving to more of creating kind of automation for data cleansing and whatnot too. So the governance is really big. And if you can keep the governance down to the stakeholder that's producing the data as close to the source possible, that's usually best, because they know what the data means and they can validate that it's good data as it starts to move up. But you need to be able to indicate, you know, where's the source data and what's the truth from that data. I don't know if I answered your question or not.
No, it's pretty good. I mean, just in terms of, that answered most of it, but then in terms of like IDs, the problem of having like the same asset in multiple systems.
Oh yeah, and we've had to do a lot of mapping, especially like with existing infrastructure, right? We're not gonna go and start ripping tags off, right? There's a huge impact if you change an asset name. So we have the way we want to name our assets in the future, which we are implementing in our digital technology, and we map that to the original asset name. Using an asset registry is a project that we've had at the airport, where we have the birth of the asset, we'll have a specific ID and specific information, and that asset registry is the source of truth that we would you know, call, you know, that's where you would validate the data against. So building an asset registry can really help with the program.
Is there a platform you're using for the assets?
Well, so what I've shown you on the screen, we use a platform called Willow, which is an integration tool. It's a Microsoft digital twin using DTDL ontology. Ontologies are really important if you guys are familiar with ontologies.
That's what's used to track the assets?
No, that's what's in the system. What tracking the assets we use, like from our CMMS, is that what you're referring to?
Like IBM Maximo?
Yeah. So we use, Hexagon Infor is our main CMMS, but we have an airfield software called Aviation for airfield inspections. We also have Maintenance Connect on our bridges, because we inherited it from a service provider, and WebTMA from our conveyances, and then we have Maximo on our baggage. So it is a lot of different systems that had to come together. We're really trying to reduce that as we turn over contracts. We want to push that out and have it to a single system if possible. Questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, just one more on the GIS side. Like, how is it that you're, or how are you using GIS in this system? Is GIS acting as somewhat of the common data store or common data environment for a lot of your data that's then going into visualization and being connected to sensors, or are you?
Not yet, and that's the biggest weakness that we haven't overcome yet, is get the vendor support to do a really good, robust integration. It's more exposing layers right now, but that's where we want to go in the future.
To give you some context, so our team, I think, total between all of us is 3 years. Like we've been at the airport, a team for about 3 years. I've been in the airport for about 1.5 years. And so right now, I think what I'm trying to dispel right now, what I'm trying to kind of mitigate for the future is getting